Hey everyone, welcome back to yet again another 2024 season preview. Almost got it mixed up there. And today we're taking a look at the Boston Bruins. Obviously the first place team in the NHL last year. And after that amazing year, there is a lot of questions surrounding the Boston Bruins right now. Absolutely. So let's just get straight into it here. Let's look at last season first before we look at what happened during the offseason and what could be expected heading into 23-24. So in 22-23, they won 65, 12, and 5 for 135 points. They set the wins record, they set the points record, they set plenty of other records as well. It is one of the best regular season teams we have seen in a very long time. And come the playoffs, they lost in round one in 7 games to the 16th seed Florida Panthers. And here's the funny thing, and here is the interesting thing when it comes to looking at players and when it comes to looking at teams like this. Always, whenever a team is first, and I said this with I believe Tampa Bay in 2019, even though I didn't have a channel. I said this with other teams that were first place in previous years. It's weird because I always have that feeling in the back of my head when they're playing that first seed after having such a good dominant season that they're going to lose. And yeah, I had that feeling again this year, and I thought to myself, well, Florida's going to give them a run for their money. It's a team that, fought their way into the playoffs, but they shouldn't win. The Bruins have a much better team on paper. They are much better down the middle. This should be their season. They should at least win the first round. And they didn't. And it was a massive disappointment. And now there's really an uncertain future for what is to come for this team. They're in a weird spot. They are now, they lost a lot of players this offseason. They got some back, but it's definitely not comparing to what they lost. Look at what they lost here. So we'll just go straight down the list and then we'll go one by one. You got Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, Taylor Hall, Dmitry Orlov, Tyler Bertuzzi, Thomas Nosek, Connor Clifton, Nick Foligno, and Mike Riley. Those are all your players that have left the roster. So, honestly, that is a pretty hefty list there of guys. And we'll start off with Bergeron and Krejci, two generational players. Bergeron, one of the best two-way guys we've seen in a long time. He is now done and retired. David Krejci, a really solid second-line center that pretty much backed up Bergeron for the entirety of his career. They pretty much started around the same time too, so they've been through it all together. And losing both of them and I cannot exemplify this enough. It is a massive blow to the center core, a massive blow. And we'll get into what their center core looks like in a second. But regardless, they lost Taylor Hall as well in a trade with the Chicago Blackhawks. Honestly, when you think about it, that trade didn't even really need to happen. The reason why they did that was because they wanted to move money to sign Tyler Bertuzzi, and then Bertuzzi never signed. So not only did Bertuzzi not sign and they lost him, they lost Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno as well. So it was a massive blow to Boston there. They also lost Orlov, a big addition to that blue line at the trade deadline. Not a huge deal. I'd say the blue line's pretty much the same from where it was at the beginning of last season, minus Orlov and Connor Clifton and Mike Riley. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same blue line. So I'm not really too worried there. But the forward core is yikes. Tomas Nosek as well did leave as well. So that is your departures. And honestly, almost no matter who you get in free agency is going to replace all of those guys. And they did a good job of trying. I'll give them that. They got James Van Riemsdyk, Morgan Geekie, Patrick Brown, Jesper Boquist, and then they got Kevin Shattenkirk. So JVR probably going to be the second line left winger, if we're being honest. Oh, and Milan Lucic. I almost forgot about that. Milan Lucic as well was also an ad. Oh my God, how could I forget Lucic? But regardless, that's me at 10 in the morning trying to stay awake. But regardless, yeah, I mean, they get JVR, a solid second-line winger. Can fit well on their power play, most likely. Not that bad of a guy whatsoever, and he's on a no-risk contract. It's not like he's on the contract that he was with Philadelphia, so it really isn't that big of a deal. Morgan Geekie, a young forward, probably will stay on this team for a bit. Probably fits in as a good third liner. Definitely a good, great guy there. Patrick Brown, good fourth line center. Jesper Boquist, a depth forward, not bad to have. And then Kevin Shattenkirk is also probably either a sixth defenseman or a depth defenseman, if we're being honest. So that's really where I see those guys. And Milan Lucic, most likely a third liner, maybe a fourth liner, but probably fits in on that bottom six. I can't see him being anywhere else. It's just too late in his career for him to be like a second liner at this point in his career. So honestly, and I can't believe I almost forgot him too, which is very surprising. But regardless, here is your projected lineup for the Boston Bruins, and yikes. So your top six, we'll get into the top six here. You got Brad Marchand, Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak as your first line. Then you got James Van Riemsdyk, Charlie Coyle, and Jake DeBrusk as your second line. So that is a pretty good top six. That is not a bad top six whatsoever. The first line does carry that, though. And by first line, I mean like Marchand and Pastrnak really do carry that top six. Yeah, and it goes to show, like, and when I said that Bergeron and Krejci were like huge losses, yeah, Pavel Zacha is your first line center. Last year, Zacha was the third line center. So that is a, and no disrespect to Zacha whatsoever. I think he's a great player. I like Zacha a lot. But that is a massive downgrade from Krejci and Bergeron, Zacha and Coyle. Yeah, that is a massive downgrade. The bottom six is where it gets weird. By the way, these lines are by the Hockey News, not made by me, so don't come at me for these lines. Jacob Lauko, Trent Frederick, and Morgan Geekie as your third line, and then Milan Lucic, Patrick Brown, and Fabian Lysell as your fourth line. So Lysell there could make the lineup out of camp. I'm not entirely too sure there just yet. I would imagine he probably spends time down below with the Providence Bruins before coming up. That's what I see happening. But however, your other winger is Mark McLaughlin, is the other guy. And then you got Jesper Boquist and AJ Greer as other guys there too. So that bottom six is kind of brutal, if I'm being honest. That is not the best bottom six in the world. Definitely, it's not like the worst in the league, but it's definitely not. It's definitely below average, if I'm being honest. That's what I would say about that bottom six. But yeah, I think the top six will have sustained that, and I think that's obviously one of the biggest X factors. That bottom six and the secondary scoring, and down the middle too. That's their X factor. We'll just get into that right now. You look at that down the middle. It's Zacha, Coyle, Brown, Frederick Brown, sorry, and then Boquist as a def guy. That is way weaker than it was last year, losing Bergeron and Krejci and Thomas Nosek too. It is just massive losses there, down the middle. So that's a big X factor. If hopefully those guys will play well, win faceoffs. That's really all they need to do. Rely on the offense from Pastrnak and Marchand. Honestly, I feel like that's where a lot of the offense is going to come from, if I'm being brutally honest with you. And then hopefully guys like Lauko, Geekie, Lucic, Brown, those guys play well. And then if Lysell does make the lineup, then hopefully he'll have a good start out of the gate. Who knows? Defense is basically the same minus Orlov, Clifton, and Riley. But Clifton and Riley weren't huge roles last year. Matt Grzelcyk, Charlie McAvoy's your first pairing. Hampus Lindholm, Brandon Carlo's your second pairing. And then Derek Forbort and Kevin Shattenkirk as your third pairing. And then you got Zaboral and Ian Mitchell, who is actually a new player. But I didn't include him because he's a much more minor player on your fourth pairing there. So, yeah, I mean, that blue line's pretty much the same. That's probably their best asset right now. It's basically the same as it was last year, minus a few guys. And then you add on Kevin Shattenkirk. So, I'm not worried about the blue line whatsoever. It's basically the same blue line we had. Then goalies, you got Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman, and then Brandon Bussey as well is another guy there that is also could play some games this coming season. But yeah, the goaltending ain't too bad. Ullmark will definitely have a worser year, but it still won't be like bad. It'll be good, but just not like a dominant year like he had this previous year. So yeah. That is your lineup. And my biggest question facing Boston right now is playoffs, basically, or how they're going to do this year, despite all the losses. Now, they're kind of similar to the Calgary Flames. There was a lot of adjustments to the roster, and honestly, it could be possible that with chemistry and that, they could miss. It's very possible. And then especially, too, they're in a competitive Atlantic division, so they are really hard to predict there, but I'm very intrigued to see how Boston's going to do. Now, something that I didn't add in the previous 3 other season previews is actually point projections. I got this in the mail today from the Hockey News. Their 23-24 fantasy guide. So we're going to read out the point projections. These are not from mine. They are from the Hockey News, okay? So you got David Pastrnak with 105 points leading the way. Brad Marchand in second with like a 50-point gap at 61. Charlie McAvoy then at 54. Pavel Zacha at 50. And Hampus Lindholm at 48. The full list is on the Hockey News' magazine. So, yeah, that's not bad. I mean, like, honestly, that's a pretty big gap from Marchand and Pastrnak. I feel like they're saying that Marchand will have a down year. I really can't see that, but of course we'll find out there. Sleeper or bust, we're bringing that back from last year as well. They have Linus Ullmark. Ullmark is coming off of a Vezina Trophy win, but the Bruins have lost several key players due to a cap crunch, and it will be difficult to replicate such a historic winning season. There's a Crease timeshare to worry about too. Yeah, because there's Jeremy Swayman playing in there as well. And Bruins fans have been excited about Brandon Bussi. I can't imagine he comes in soon, though. I think Ullmark has to be gone before Bussi comes in and starts playing consistent amount of games. But yeah, Swayman plays a factor in there too. They could run a tandem. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Honestly, with the team they have, it wouldn't be a terrible idea either. So, we'll find out there, of course. But yeah, the Bruins will be worse. There's no question. They're not having a 65-win season again. But the bigger question is the matter of how worse will they be. So, honestly, we'll find out. But honestly, I don't think they'll be as bad as people may think they're going to be. I think they probably do miss, but they will be pretty close. It just sucks they don't have a first-round pick this year because they could really use that. But regardless, that'll do it for this 2023-2024 season preview of the Boston Bruins. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment down below. I greatly appreciate it. Tomorrow we have the Winnipeg Jets, so stay tuned for that. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.